Salutations everybody, it is Matty here today. I hope this video finds you extremely well after a nice weekend. Maybe you got some time to detach, do a little R&R, or hopefully a little time to recover is coming up for you. I know finally I got that window. I've been going a million miles a minute and that's going to pick back up in just a few short days now, but I was just going so fast between content creation, game development duties, and they were just ramping up at the same time. It was a lot. But I had a moment to just breathe this past weekend. It was really nice, so I hope you get that moment as well. Now, this is an exciting week. We're talking about Gamescom, opening night live, meaning gameplay, reveals, announcements, all that good stuff. But we're not really starting off on the most positive foot here on this Monday because we are talking about the situation Black Myth Wukong has found itself in. And as someone who's very invested in the business side of the games industry and just likes to analyze the inner workings between like content creator and game publisher, influencer and game publisher, the differences between those, press and game publisher, and the differences between those, the tiers. A lot of this situation with Black Myth Wukong kind of exposes that. And we also have a little bit of an interesting situation on the review front that I wanted to talk about. So this is going to be more of discussing the games industry as a whole when it comes to it being a business and just some thoughts on that before we get into a lot more fun stuff later on in the week. Now, on the note of Black Myth Wukong, just a bit of housekeeping here, not to hold you up too much, but just to let you know what's going on the review front. A lot of you were asking like, no Black Myth Wukong review, Matty, what's going on? Like, I want to check out some more reviews from you, and I appreciate those of you who sent comments and tweets. Like, it's really sweet. I definitely want to do more reviews. I just had to make a kind of what I call a business decision this summer, which was really focusing time on game development in exchange for doing more news coverage and preview pieces instead of what I like to typically do, which is more review coverage. I love reviewing games. It's my favorite thing to do. And so I apologize things slowed down, but you're going to see it gradually ramp up. So that meant I skipped games that were less interesting to me, like Flintlock. Black Myth Wukong, I'm not really super excited about. It looks great, but just not looking like the game I'm trying to play right now. So expect things to ramp up on the review front soon, hopefully starting with something like Star Wars Outlaws. But we'll talk then. Just wanted to make sure I gave an update on the reviews, and I appreciate those of you interested in them. Sorry for bowing out for a little bit on that. With that, I just want to begin at the top with the review situation for Black Myth Wukong. So reviews for Black Myth Wukong are in and overall pretty good. Some surprisingly low ones, like this reaching as low as a 6 was kind of stunning to me, but I think I get where some reviewers are coming from. Now, I'm not interested in reviewing reviews. I've tried that in the past, and it's just like, I think, a weird form of content. But what I do want to talk about is where these scores fall. And one thing that's been consistent among all these reviewers is noting that they were all on PC and that there were a level of technical issues. Now, that's important because Cyberpunk 2077 was a valuable lesson for all reviewers across the industry. It's extremely common when you submit a request for a review copy that you kind of just take what's given to you because you're lucky to get a review copy at all. Take it as someone who's been doing this for, well, like 13, 14 years. I'm still struggling to get into contact with certain companies just to do my job, just to be like, hey, I want to review the next big game from you. And most times you're just straight up ghosted. And I'd like to say I have a decent online presence that could at least warrant a response, not to sound entitled. But yeah, it's really tough to just scratch and claw your way to a code. So when you do get a code, you kind of just take what you can get. Oh, you gave me Xbox, you give me Switch? Sure. Like, I need access. There are other outlets like IGN where are afforded like a dozen codes at once because they do guides and reviews and all that stuff. So they take up a lot of the codes, and apparently there's a limited amount printed out. But yeah, there is a little bit of priority in that, which we'll get into between influencer, content creator, as well as the press. Still, as I was saying, Cyberpunk 2077 was such a valuable lesson for us to learn. So when they say something like, oh, PS4 and Xbox One codes aren't available for Cyberpunk, there was a time you just kind of shrug your shoulders and go, okay. But then you now learn with what Cyberpunk did with its last gen versions, yeah, maybe we should ask a little more questions on that front as to why certain things are unavailable. That brings us to this article from PlayStation Lifestyle titled, Lack of Black Myth Wukong PS5 Reviews Causes Concern. Black Myth Wukong PS5 reviews are nowhere to be found with less than 24 hours left to launch, and players are understandably concerned. We're not going to get to the assortment of controversy that developer Game Science has found itself surrounded by, but it is genuinely concerning that the studio chose to release some shoddy PS5 gameplay over the weekend, presumably to quell said concerns. They also continue on saying, full disclosure, our network was one of those who specifically requested a PS5 code for Black Myth Wukong, and like everyone else, we were told that the request could not be accommodated at this time. All of the Black Myth Wukong reviews that you've read thus far are tested for the PC version. So with that, it does cause some concern for the PS5 version of the game. There is gameplay out now. I have it on screen that came from IGN China, and I don't think it looks shoddy. I think that's a pretty rash definition for what's there. I think YouTube file compression does a lot to these games in a negative way, and I hope YouTube can somehow one day figure that out, because unless you're rendering in like 4K, you're maybe getting decent quality out of the games you're showing off. But never have I ever made a review where I feel like the video I'm putting out on a visual front is really displaying how beautiful certain games can be. And I think art style lends itself a little bit better in that manner of speaking. But also there were people noting like camera cuts. Are they chopping out frame dips? There was one point where there was a lot of VFX on screen and it looked like the performance dipped ever so slightly. It's possible because it's also very brief gameplay. I don't know. I think it's really rash to assume things look awful from just this. I also think it's fair to have a level of concern with just PC reviews. My suggestion, as always, is if you're excited for this game, just don't pre-order, wait for performance reviews. That extra day or two can save you a lot of headaches, and just knowing, like, hey, what's the performance review for the PS5 version? Because I'm sure Digital Foundry will be all over it. But yeah, it's one of those situations we just have to be a little bit wary of when it comes to these games. Because I do think Black Myth Wukong does look great. The only reason I'm not interested in picking it up and playing it is it's been described as a boss rush game. And I know that's good that they kind of got rid of the Souls-like narrative surrounding it. It's more of just an action RPG. But I played a game called Fury years ago. I thought it was pretty good, pretty underrated. But that was a boss rush game. And it was cool, but like I just don't enjoy the boss rush. Like, even in a game I've learned to really love in Sekiro, they have a boss rush mode in there, and I didn't even enjoy that. I kind of like the in-between exploration. Gives me a moment to breathe. But, you know, different strokes for different folks out there, so no problem if you do enjoy it. But yeah, I'm not really interested in Black Myth Wukong on that level, but I think the game looks great, and I would just say, and my personal suggestion would be just take a moment to see if you only have consoles available, maybe hold off and just see how things are going over there before committing fully to a purchase. But perhaps that's words on deaf ears, given how we love to pre-order our games here in the industry. Now, more interestingly is what's also broken here surrounding what influencers received when receiving a copy as well for Black Myth Wukong. And I want to again discuss less the ethics of the situation in terms of the subject matter that is surrounding this company, and more about, again, the business side of things. I'm not trying to dodge tough topics, but it's just not what I'm here to talk about in the terms of like politics and all this stuff. It's not what you're here for. It's not what I'm here to do. So the headline is Black Myth Wukong influencers asked to leave politics, COVID, and feminist propaganda out of coverage, as reported by Sports Illustrated video games team. French content creator and former Game Cult editor Benoit Rainier had posted a video revealing that he had been sent a document which he then shared online. The document, sent to influencers and streamers by Hero Games, the marketing team for Black Myth Wukong's developers and publisher Game Science, specifies a number of topics they aren't allowed to talk about while covering the game. These include insulting other influencers or players. Okay, sure, fair. Using offensive language or humor. Okay. Using trigger words like quarantine, isolation, or COVID-19, and discussing China's games industry policies, opinions, news, etc. Now, there are a number of ways that you can look at this. As someone who skimmed through at least a respectable amount of articles on the subject, I don't see many bringing it up. They're usually jumping to the IGN report on what they talked about with, you know, studio conduct within Game Science. But I'm really thinking about what they're trying to avoid here is some of Tencent's questionable reputation at times. There's a lot of people who have issues with how Tencent is stepping into the industry and how much money they have and how they're utilizing it. And so when you see here, as Daniel Ahmad had stated, Tencent has acquired a 5% minority stake in Game Science, the developer of Black Myth Wukong. I think you can erect a respectable defense for the developer and publisher here in Game Science, that what's happening is they're like, look, just review the game, y'all. Like, just don't talk about things like what's going on with Tencent or things within our team. Just talk about the game. Don't get your personal politics involved. And on that front, I can kind of get it. Like, there's a level of some people getting away from what a game review is, and they're trying to just narrow the scope a little bit. And I can understand the attempt at doing that. What's worth considering here, though, is that it says it appears the document had only been sent to YouTuber and streamers rather than game journalists. Video Games Chronicle did not receive the document, and Eurogame has also stated that it didn't either. The problem with this is I can understand reviewers taking a more focused approach, but like streaming this game is now kind of like limited speech. Like you just can't talk about anything. You know, like just showing off the game, there's like a list of things you can and can't say, and that's not great. So I think I sympathize more for the streamer than the reviewer here. Otherwise, you might be off topic with what people are tuning in for at times. But I think I get both sides of the argument here is how I'm approaching it. I don't know if there's a perfect answer for this. It is unfortunately one of those situations, although I know people will scream about it that it shouldn't be that way. But I'm just saying, I think it is one of those situations, and I apologize if it sounds like I'm fence riding, because I'm not. It's just I try to be understanding and open-minded and try to just take in all perspectives and be considerate to all avenues. But for me personally, like I understand if you're a team who's worked years on a game that you kind of want to just have people talk about the game and just be like, look, like we've tried to iron this stuff out. Like we don't need to hear about studio conduct issues, or we don't need to hear about your thoughts on Tencent. Like, did we do this right or did we do this wrong? Like that's what we want to hear. I understand and respect that, but I also understand and respect like a freedom of speech and being able to just say your piece. I think that's also equally very important. With that in mind, the main thing I really wanted to talk about with all of this is the difference, right? We noticed the difference here, and what I read is that YouTubers and streamers got one thing and press got another. This is extremely common, and you can usually tell just by how you're addressed, like even down to the email of some of these companies. Like it'll be like influencers at company name, and it's like, okay, I know exactly what bucket I fall in. There are tiers to this thing. Like I've gone to preview events where I've been in like group C, and there's an A group and a B group that go before me and get their coverage in first and sometimes get special privileges. This is an industry, as I've said a number of times, completely guided by a level of nepotism. Obviously, like any working field, who you know has a huge impact on things. Status is a huge thing in this industry. For me, I think I have a respectable online following, but I definitely know for most of these companies, in fact, I've accidentally seen emails forwarded about reporting on my channel and like my stats and stuff. I know how they view things. Like numbers are okay on this channel. Like numbers are pretty good here. Like focus on this. And I'm like, interesting. Like that's how they evaluate you. It's even sometimes not even about your conduct online, but just the numbers you pull versus your subscriber amount. Like you see that sort of stuff happen from time to time. It's extremely common, unfortunately. And so what you're seeing here are buckets. The press, seemingly according to the agency handling this, looks like they may not be able to muscle certain things in, certain talking points in, versus streamers and content creators. We don't really have that much of a leg to stand on. It's just like we're independent and we're as easy to cut out as we are to include. Why is that? Because what I always say is for people like me, I'm lucky to have my own platform big enough where I can stand my ground and be like, no, screw that. I'm not going to do that, and make a little noise about it and then make my coverage afterwards and make a stance. But there are people who are trying to scratch and claw their way up. And a lot of ways you do that in this industry is through access. So they can easily say, well, we can wash our hands of Matty because we have X, Y, and Z lined up and ready to do whatever the hell we want them to do and keep things in line and keep the vision. And they have a big audience too. Like they're just people who don't care. And they're like, just give me the game. I don't care. So yeah, there is a level of ethics to it for sure. But this is, I think, one of those moments where I just like to talk on where the industry is at. And yeah, we definitely fall into different buckets. And I'm not saying that as an excuse. It's more just that, like, yeah, we're 100% treated differently. There are companies that do it really well. In my experience doing this for a while, there are other companies that don't do it well at all. There are times that I'll get access to a game and I'll be told an embargo, which for those who don't know what that means, it's like, hey, this is when your review can go up. This is when you're allowed to share full impressions of the game. I'm like, okay, so I plan all my content around it, and it'll be like, let's say it's Matty, your review goes out this Friday, August 23rd, whatever day it is. And I'm like, okay, I'm planning for that. And then I sign on to like Twitter on the 21st and I see reviews for the press have gone up first. It's bullshit, and it happens super often, more often than I'd like. And it's the worst feeling because it's like, okay, so you're using me as a marketing arm, it seems now, is what I've been communicated to. It's like you want the prolonged media coverage. Like I'm not good enough to be in that pocket. So there's different coverage and treatment on that level. And I definitely think that these companies try to take advantage of some people's lack of experience. I'm super experienced in what I do. So I know when companies try to butter you up and when they're just shooting you straight. And so there's a lot of that too. So yeah, it's just a really interesting thing to reflect on, in my opinion, to get the understanding across to people that I've not seen a document like this before. This is the second time we've seen something like this where Marvel Rivals said, like, you can't say anything negative about the game, which is what? What? How is that that's gonna earn you no good press at all? But I digress. This is the second time we've seen something like this, and it's starting to be hidden more and more in the fine print. So someone that is new to all of this, they're trying to take advantage of those people who are just coming in like, oh, this is business as usual, and trying to inch things forward. Why are they doing that now? The industry is growing at a rapid rate. While things aren't in a perfect spot, it's making more money than it ever has before, so it's time to adjust the standards, so to say. And so, again, that's where we kind of stand. And so, yeah, if you didn't know, press and content creators being treated differently, now you know. So glad to inform as best as I can. So let me know what you think of what's going on here with Black Myth Wukong. It's a really interesting situation here, and I'm really looking forward to getting your thoughts down below. Try to keep it as civil as you can. I think it's really important with this sort of subject matter. It's just like, let's not get into the whole mudslinging thing. Like, this is just one of those topics about industry health and future. And so with that, I leave it in your hands. Be on your best behavior, and I'll catch you in the next video. Stay sexy, stay active. I love you all. Peace.